So Satou Sabally has been one of the best players in the entirety of the Olympics. She has been exceptionally good for Germany. And this is an out of practice, not in great shape Satou, who probably is that number one free agent. Like if you are the Indiana Fever, for me, I'm going to make an entire video about this. It'll be out today. And it's talking about the 3 free agents that you look for. And there's 3 that you look for for different things. And Satou is without question one of them. So anyway, she has been exceptionally good, and she weighed in on the prioritization rules. Basically, I wish that I could play all of this, but at least you can see it right here. I think it's really bad to punish international players. The NBA does a better job incorporating national players and pushing them in the media. Like there's a clear disparity in that. So what the prioritization rules are is, it is a rule that if you're not back for the start of training camp, you can't play in the WNBA season. So any player that is playing in the French league, which is one of the biggest leagues in the world, is not allowed to play in the WNBA. Which is why it's why the French national team were able to just play everybody. Like Marine Johannes obviously focused on the Olympics. Were they able to have everyone focused on the Olympics the whole time? Because most of them were playing in the French league. But where it becomes an issue is when the French players decide not to play in France. So it's the reason why the only reason Gabby Williams played in the WNBA last year is because she got injured. And she missed the playoffs for the team of France. So with the way the WNBA season starts, there are some overseas seasons that overlap with it. So players, especially in France, you're not able to come over. And it's not even affecting the international players. As much as anything, it's affecting the American players looking to make some money. And I don't think it's fair for a league to have a rule like that. Obviously, they brought it into the CBA because we know the WNBA players did not have any negotiation power before this current CBA. But it was a rule that was brought in to basically mean that players couldn't show up a week into the season. They couldn't miss a couple of games. Basically, it meant that if you're a WNBA player, not that you have to just be a WNBA player, but it's to discourage playing overseas. And the issue is that the vast majority of contracts in the WNBA, it's not necessarily that everyone being like, oh, it's a ton of money for only 4 months' work. But it's like, if in the other 8 months, you're not either playing overseas, which, again, people do. If you're not playing overseas, or in those other 8 months, you are not working out a whole ton, you're out of the league very, very soon. Again, I need to figure out what is wrong with the flash kind of behind my head. I'll try to figure that out, but I'll be home tomorrow, don't worry. But yeah, so that's one of the things is like, most WNBA players have to play overseas, especially if you're like a rookie. Imagine a rookie, you're making 75 grand a year, and then you're being told you can make 200 grand to go play for a team in France. But then also, if you make that 200 grand in France, you're not allowed to play in the WNBA because of a rule, because you would miss the entirety of training camp. It's just odd. It's just really, really odd. And for people being like, oh, but like, what about all the players from Australia? The NBL doesn't clash. The BBL didn't clash with Megan Gustafson, Carly Samuelson, Temi Fagbenle. Those players, like, it didn't clash for them. I don't think EuroLeague clashes for the likes of Satou, Fee Collier, Kayla McBride, who were playing for Fenerbahce. But at the same time, you're missing out on a lot of players. And for people being like, oh, the WNBA is all the best players in the world, it's not. Like, as much as the WNBA players are the best, they are. The WNBA players are the best. But I genuinely think that you can argue. But like, Diana Taurasi was offered more than her WNBA salary to sit out. Like that, when she used to play in Russia making millions, she used to be offered more than her WNBA salary to not go back. That's how much they would pay. And obviously she always played. But you could argue that Emma Meesman is a top 5 player in the world and she's not playing the WNBA. Marine Johannes was probably the best bench player in the WNBA last year, if not the best, one of the best. One of the best isolation scorers, and in a league that's consistently getting faster and putting a little bit more emphasis on guard play, it's going to do that, especially with the emergence of a Caitlin Clark, of a Kennedy Carter. When she comes back, she's going to be great. And then you've got Gabby Williams, who's a borderline all-star, who hasn't been able to play who wouldn't have been able to play the last 2 years. So the way the rules are, again, the rules are there so that owners don't have to worry about their best players potentially showing up 2 or 3 weeks into the season. Like, that's what the rules are there for. And that, like, the players had no power to negotiate that. Like, the reason, like, these players would want to play in the WNBA, but their overseas teams were paying them way more. It's like, oh, the players were just greedy. They didn't prioritize the WNBA. Why would they prioritize a team giving them 60 grand when there's another team paying them $500,000? Why would they prioritize a team giving them 60 grand? So, yeah, it's like, this all, by the way, becomes null and void if, like, when the new CBA comes in and the players start making double the money in the WNBA. It probably becomes null and void because a lot of players will choose then to not end up going overseas. And for international players, I actually don't think this is anything to do with international players because the prioritization rules are the same for international players and Americans. So I don't really know what Satou's talking about for that, because especially if you're looking at players that have been pushed, like Lauren Jackson, Ticha Penicheiro, like, they have pushed international players. Camila Cardoso's, it's not like Camila Cardoso's not an international player. It's not like Nika Mule's not an international player. And if you're talking about pushing rookies, they're really pushing those two players. Especially, like, based on their ability, nobody who's played as little minutes as Nika Mule has been pushed as much as Nika Mule in the WNBA. And she's not American. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what relevance that point was from Satou, but I think she's right about the prioritization rule. Something needs to happen in the new CBA. Something genuinely needs to happen. And I think that, I don't know, I think there needs to be a cutoff point, but the cutoff point has to be at training camp. Like, that can't be the cutoff point. You can't have scenarios where some of the best 15, 20 players in the world are choosing not to play in the league. By choice, not by ability, by choice. If we look at the NBA, how many players could be top 50 players in the NBA and have not played by choice? The only one that I could think of is Mirotic, who at some stage in his career would have been like a $25 million a year guy, choosing to go back to Barcelona for half the money that he was offered in the NBA. Mirotic is the only player I can think of. Like, Sergio Llull could have been great had he come over when he was young, but I don't know necessarily with him. I think Juan Carlos Navarro, had he stuck it out in the NBA, could have been a $10 million a year guy. But at the same time, there's been no top tier players. Whereas in the women's, Gabby Williams is a top tier player. Like, Satou deciding to sit out the first half of the WNBA season because she wanted to be ready for the Olympics and finish her overseas season. Like, that doesn't happen. Satou made the all WNBA first team. Emma Mason was finals MVP and decided not to play in the W 2 years later. Not that she was bad. She's still a top 5 player in the world, but she's doing it by choice. So something needs to happen with the prioritization rule, especially with all of the new eyes on the sport. How many people are watching these Olympics? They've got to make sure the best players in the world are playing in the W. And the prioritization rule either has to go or has to be tweaked.